I am Laura Hart. I am the founder and CEO of Robofun, and I am here with my dear colleague, Sarah Chakrin, who is the executive director of Vision Ed Inc. How are you, Sarah?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really enjoying the weather.
Yeah.
Our last gasp to get out, those of us in New York City.
It's true, and it's beautiful out.
Yes. So I'm going to start with those of you who may be new to our weekly Heart to Heart. I find people that are interesting and doing really vital, great work and bring them on to share what they're doing. If you're interested in our programs, we run programs for kids ages 3 to 13, which is all about creative uses of technology to help children. And we have a studio on 102nd and Broadway where we run robotics, coding, animation, Minecraft and circuitry classes, both during the day, during vacation days, during all sorts of summertime, sometimes homeschool groups during the day, also private lessons and birthday parties. If you go to robofun.org, you can find out all about us. If you sign up for the mailing list, you get prompts. We sometimes throw at you cool, like free afternoons or a discount on a program. So go on over to robofun.org and sign up. It only goes to you. We don't send it off to anybody else, the mailing list. And now I want to turn to Sarah and her organization. Her organization is called Vision Ed Inc. and goes by VEI as well. And initially, maybe 18 years ago, I believe, I don't have the exact date, I started Vision Education and Media 23 years ago, and I noticed that perhaps I also wanted to have a not-for-profit. After trying to successfully run 2 companies, I came to my senses and realized that was a bit of an insane thing, and that I really I was being pushed and pulled in too many directions. And about that time, I had received in Vision Ed Inc. a fantastic grant, and I had hired Sarah to run the grant. And she had always done an amazing job of running this grant. And I said, Sarah, there you go. You got yourself, you're now the executive director and you have a company to run. So Vision Ed Inc. is a not-for-profit. Robofun, also known as Vision Education and Media, is a for-profit. And Sarah and we work together, but we are completely separate, legally, financially, and every other way. And Sarah does amazing work. And so the next part of this is what do you do? Tell us about your work, Sarah.
Yeah. So, like you said, it was founded to be sort of a sister organization to Robofun, with sort of a joint objective of providing project-based STEM learning programs. As a nonprofit, we are better positioned to obtain funding and work in underserved communities and schools and bring those opportunities to kids that might not normally have them. Having an arts background, I wanted to, when I sort of took over, I wanted to honor what you set out to do originally and incorporate some of my, passions and also discoveries into it. So I maintain your sort of like vision, but I added the A so that it's STEAM-based programs. And for those who don't know, that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And that's partly because of my love of art, although I know you have a love of art too. And it's partly because, primarily really, because I feel like STEM is a great term and it's a great direction for all of us to go in education, but it still involves words that might alienate a lot of people who don't feel like they're scientifically or technologically inclined. And I feel like arts has the potential to engage kids in other areas, and it incorporates STEAM learning anyway. It is, I mean, at this point in the world, arts do involve science and technology and engineering and mathematics. So we work on bringing programs of that nature to kids in underserved communities. And we do that through a number of different grants and with partner organizations, and just working on trying to create new content and expand and reach more people.
I want to, if I didn't make this clear, make a real plug for what Sarah's doing, because it's really great work. And not only has she continued the company that I started, which is very moving for me, she's grown it. She's grown it maybe 30 to 50% larger than when I handed it to her. And that through COVID, that's not an easy thing to do.
It's been, yeah.
And she's also really struggled with how to have an identity separate from my company. And she's done that. And I never even realized that I was handing her both a positive thing, but also a real challenge that I'm proud of her.
Thank you. That's, I mean, honestly, my biggest sort of priority in taking the organization in whatever direction, in really like picking up the baton from you, was that whatever I did, I really wanted to honor what you set out to do when you founded the organization. So I hope
you have done that. You have really done that. I've told you that privately, but it's nice to be able to tell you publicly.
Oh, thank you.
The one thing that's not the one of the things that Sarah really connected to very early was the need to address trauma with students, and especially now. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how you're developing programs to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sort of like the sort of anecdotal bit about how I sort of came to be very aware of that is that when I started working in the one school that we got that grant in under you as the executive director.
Yep.
I thought, you know, if I'm going to run this grant, I want to learn some of the things that we're teaching these kids. So I volunteered to like co-teach some of the programs that Robofun was doing with some of your staff in these classrooms. And the thing that I learned was that, you know, like STEM is great, STEM is important, STEM is impressive, but you can have like the coolest, most state-of-the-art like equipment and technology at the front of the room. And like, if these kids are going through something or other or multiple things outside that classroom, they're still going to like knock it off the table and tell you to F off. And, you know, learning can't happen unless we address, like, this feels like such a cliche buzzword, but like the whole child, it's so important. And we can't even begin to start until we consider whether or not these kids' needs are met in every other, like, well, not every other, because we obviously can't do that, but in as many capacities as we have within our power. And the thing that I realized just from being in those classes, and also then from reading more and more material on the subject, is that stress and trauma affects children and adults physiologically and in such a way that it really impacts their capacity to learn, their, like, how they take in information, how they process information, whether or not they can process that information and synthesize it and apply it to something different. So what I really began to realize, and I'm still working on, because it's, you know, it's vast, but it's important, is that we really need to have a pedagogical approach that is informed by stress and trauma and its effects. These kids have unique needs and challenges that are not considered in you know, traditional educational, like, pedagogical philosophies, or not enough, really. It really needs to be a different approach. It needs to be the focus of how we plan our lessons and our activities and how we approach these schools and individuals and communities. And if that's not the number one thing that we're taking into account, then I don't feel like we're doing anyone any justice or any service.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I remember when I didn't have these gray hairs.
I'm working on it too.
I was a computer teacher teacher, and something started going on in the classroom where one kid was sort of bullying another, and I just shut down the whole classroom and said, what we're learning is much less important than the way we treat each other.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly encompassing what you're saying, but
it's true. That's exactly it. I mean, nothing is going to happen if kids can't feel safe, if kids can't feel successful, if they can't feel like they're supported. I just had another thought and I forgot it, but one of the things I remember reading was that it's in a book, I believe, called The Explosive Child, which I know you guys have read, right?
Yep.
That talked about how like even a child's capacity for sort of like handling and hearing rejection in any way, shape, or form is affected by any sort of stress and trauma that they're experiencing in their life, whether it's like, the sort of slow burn of poverty or like abuse or, any sort of stress and trauma. And it affects their capacity to like handle unexpected situations or rejection or whatever they perceive as those things. So that what it taught me, which is relevant to what you were just saying, is that, what I thought about was like the kid that just flipped a table because you said he couldn't use the bathroom. Like, he's not doing that because he's got a terrible temper or because he's trying to be, like, this is something that's happening inside him or her, and like, she doesn't know better, she doesn't have the tools to
having the tools.
Yeah.
So when you take this more concretely, and I'm putting you on the spot, and you can, if it's too concrete.
No, I need to work on concrete. That's good. Thank you.
Can you tell me how it's been affecting maybe any of the above, your hiring process, you're working with schools process, you're in the classroom processes for training your people?
Yeah. We're working on, we actually have our first set of staff and curriculum for teaching social emotional learning as like a curriculum this year, and we're working with some really brilliant, wonderful teaching artists for that. And really the training is that because they have such a great background in education as well, and they have experience. And so it's really, the training is a lot of just conversations, because what we talk about concretely is to think about the words that you choose and think about what you might represent even before you open your mouth in front of a classroom. And what they know that you don't, and what you know that they don't, and listen. And I mean, and I tell this to all of my like teaching artists and even ones from other, organizations that work with us. Like, lesson plans are great. Like, have it so that, if you need it, it's there. And if the kids are not, like, if it's not happening, don't do it. Like, follow, like, the kids will let you know what they need.
It's funny that you said this, because I was taught every time we hire new people at Robofun, we came up with this new Zoom thing so I can meet them. And one person was talking about struggling, and I said, it's always kids over curriculum. I like that little bit.
Yeah, exactly right.
I think sometimes we get like, oh my God, here's the checklist. We have to cover this, this, and this. You don't have to cover any of it. And you're not covering it if you think you're covering it and they're not listening. You're not getting anywhere. So,
yeah. And that's really, that's the lucky position that we're in, as like being in like the public education system, but just outside of it, so that we don't, we have obviously responsibilities and compliance and mandates and things like that, but we don't have to. I mean, you and I taught at a time when like the concept of teaching to the test was like a dirty word, and now like they don't have any choice. So it's kind of a luxury that we don't have to teach to the test, and we can, there's no like threat of like repercussion of like, our class failing a standardized test or whatever, if we stop and think about like what these kids might need before we even get to like the content.
Right.
Because nothing is going to happen until we address that. And and it's important you ask for concrete answers, and I don't feel like I've given you any, but
No. I mean, I think a training to your staff is huge. That's a very concrete answer. But speaking of concrete, what I realize is that you and I know each other now for 8 years, I think. And we never really set out what you do. Like, where do you run your programs? How do you run your programs? What's covered in them? And it might be helpful for our audience to hear that.
It'd be helpful for me to say that too. It's a challenge. I like the elevator pitch is project-based STEAM programs for kids in underserved communities. What that means in practice, at least right now, and hopefully going forward, is that we work with other community-based organizations like Robofun and some of our other partners, and we create like a set of programs under like one funding stream or another to bring them into schools. So we're in we've done, for example, photography. For an after-school club, we're doing social emotional learning, like weekly push-in programming. I hate that term, but it's the DOE term, like integrated into the classroom. To help the kids learn like social emotional learning and dealing with, stress and trauma of the last year of, ongoing, sort of learning how to like just be with humans again, outside of your home. And work in groups and be respectful of one another and communicate with one another and choose your words and identify your feelings and, ask for what you need. And so that's really sort of the center of what I want any of our curriculum going forward to involve. Right now, what it is running these programs and our partners programs, as like a cohesive set of opportunities to each individual school that we work with. Right. So we're in a couple of schools in the South Bronx, and we're now in 6 schools in Brooklyn. And every school has different needs and challenges, and we work with the administrators, with the principal and the counselors, and learn from them what they want, what their kids need, what their communities need, and do our best to respond to that with whatever capacity we have to do so.
Right. So you're kind of the umbrella organization that you run programs, and then you hire other organizations to run programs that are within what you want to offer, but that is not your specialty. Currently,
yes, yeah, and I'm happy to like defer to other people with other specialties, but I also do have like the ultimate goal of creating like our own repertoire of STEAM programs that are stress and trauma like informed, so that it is maybe Lego robotics and programming and music production and photography that all really take a stress and trauma centered approach, and then bring kids in at whatever level or artistic medium engages them, and then show them all of the ways that it can apply, to like the 21st century skills. Like everyone is going digital. It's important. The thing that I don't know, my brother disagreed with me strongly, but he likes to disagree with me. I think it's a good analogy. I was thinking that like kids now, and even parents now, especially if they're in underserved communities, all of us we're technologically savvy, but we can still get away with not being computer savvy, and that's a problem. Like, our technology has adapted to be as user-friendly as possible for us, but the things that everyone's talking about as like necessary skills for, transferring into society and global, whatever. Right. Those are still skills that like cannot be made pretty, on our iPhone or whatever. We need to engage and learn how to create and progress in that way as well. And that's I think that's really what STEAM should be focused on and is focused on, and to my understanding. That's great. That's great. I thought that you I mean,
it's such a complex word or acronym scheme, and it's a tricky thing because we don't talk about reading as having an acronym.
Right.
You know, we learn how to read, and we don't learn how to read like an hour a week, usually, or not even learn how to read, but deeply get into reading something. But so how did you get, okay, wait a minute, we have a question.
Yeah, I see it.
Isabel is my biggest fan, one of our mentors, and Isabel, thank you for jumping in. Question for Sarah. Do you have any free resources that teach parents or others interested in social emotional learning for kids that you provide at your organization?
Not specifically that we provide, but I couldn't take credit for it anyway. It's amazing. Our social emotional learning curriculum is very heavily drawn from CASEL, which is it's an organization, and I am going to be terrible, and I forgot what the acronym stands for. It's CASEL, and it's like the consortium for something.
I found it. I'll put it up on the.
Yeah, if you Google CASEL, you'll find it, and they have so many amazing resources and explanations and all kinds of things.
Okay. So I'm putting it up. So before I ask you, I'm going to ask you some questions about your past and how you got to where you are. But before we get there, what if somebody's like, I want to learn more about this Vision Ed Inc. I want to go to their website. Can I put that into the chat?
Yes, please. You'll find a little sign that's like a little disclaimer that we're working on updating, but you can definitely find out more information about us on visioned.org, and we will update with like what we're doing now. But our goals, our objectives, our mission, our vision are up there, and please stay in touch with us. That'd be great.
Okay, so here's my question.
Okay.
When I hired Sarah, she was working, I believe, in Guatemala.
It's true.
So how did you get to Guatemala? And so start us in, give us a few elevator pitches. You went to college to study what, and where did you do that?
I went to the University of Iowa. I have a degree, an undergrad degree in English and art, with an emphasis on photography, which really just means that I'm really good at holding a tray of drinks and serving people. It didn't qualify me for a whole lot else, but I loved it. I loved what I learned, and I still use what I learned. And I
think it qualified you to become an executive director of an organization.
That's what it did. That's what I meant to say. I at the same time, I was really interested in international development and sort of always keeping an eye on, events, and news. And I did some international travel and volunteering, and came back to the U.S. and couldn't figure out what to do. And so while I was trying to figure that out, I started substitute teaching on the southwest side of Chicago. And it was, all of the things that you would expect substitute teaching on the southwest side of Chicago to be. And I also realized that knowing what was going on there and what wasn't going on there, like, I couldn't walk away from it. I wasn't sure I wanted to be in education, but I knew that I couldn't leave now that I knew. So I began going through like the process to get state certified. And while I was doing that, I got hired as an assistant teacher at a Montessori school in Evanston, Illinois. And then from there, I actually took the Montessori head teacher training, and spent 5 years doing that, teaching Montessori for kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, writing curriculum.
So you were the head teacher for
head teacher. Yeah.
I only think it's important to stress that because teaching is hard, and running an organization is hard also, or maybe harder, maybe not. But knowing that you've been there, I think, is super important for our audience. You've been the teacher who's had grumpy kids, who you're trying to have, who you can tell something's in the way for them to connect in the classroom.
Especially during, I'm going to try not to go off on my little rant about, experts, but that's the thing that I really learned while teaching, while substitute teaching, while looking for work and not being qualified for anything because I didn't have this many years in like academia, was that we really need to rethink what we mean when we say experts, because like the analogy that I use all the time is like, what if in medicine we considered the people that wrote about it the experts, but not the practitioners? Because that's what we do in education. Like the teachers are not considered the experts. It's the...
Wow, Sarah, you have just given me an idea for some I mean, that is brilliant. That is just, we have to have more of these conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
I
mean, in the beginning, it was infuriating to me because I was looking for work and I couldn't find any. But it's the truth, like everyone is in, like everyone along the chain, every stakeholder, in education is an expert in some way or another, and we need to acknowledge and honor and use that. Like the teachers in the classroom and the parents and everybody has their own unique view, and we really need to, if we're going to address like kids and communities' needs, we need to consider that. So anyway, real quick, I loved Montessori education and the approach and the pedagogy, and was very frustrated that it was only available predominantly in private schools. Maria Montessori herself developed like her pedagogy for poor kids in Italy, like 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. And so I always thought, like, I'm going to take what I learned here, I'm going to appreciate it, and I do forever love it, thankful for it. I'm in touch with like some of my former students still and colleagues, and but I thought I'm going to take this and figure out how to try and bring these values and this practice into a more available arena. And in the meantime, I left and I went to graduate school for global affairs here at NYU, and focused on education and international development here. And traveled to Guatemala and worked there for a little over a year, and came back and worked for you, and was sort of had one foot in each thing. So I was teaching, and I'm watching the clock and I'm getting very nervous because I feel like things are winding.
No, we don't have to end at the data. But as I told you earlier, I always tell my people who have volunteered to come on that we go from 10 to 30 minutes. Don't worry.
Right.
And if we wanted 10 minutes, great. But I say inevitably we get to the 30 minutes and we're still going on and on. So that's what happened. But it was like one of my first couple of years here, and you were very generous to give me, whatever time off. Like it was around the UN General Assembly time of year, and you were like, go to all the things, go to whatever you can get into, and I did, because that stuff is fascinating. And and I had a generous boss that gave me the time and space to do that, and was standing in one of the workshops one day, or the talks or whatever, and people were talking about like education in emergencies. That's also a great resource for anyone that's interested in international education. The INEE, Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. Okay. Hold on, I'm going to put that.
Sorry, yeah.
No, keep talking.
But I was sitting in there and I was listening to everyone's comments and questions, and they were talking about like kids and in traumatic and stressful situations all over the world, and being at the school that we were in at the time, all I could think about was like, well, our kids are in crisis too. Right.
It's all of the silent crises, right. All of the silent crises that are going on.
Yeah.
Every day, every moment.
We
have a front row seat on. So.
Yeah. And I've learned so much from these kids, and I adore them, and they're so brilliant, and right now their only shot, if their school doesn't have additional funding, or they don't have any other outside influences or opportunities, is to play the game and do the standardized tests and hope they get through all of that, and then maybe they can do the thing that really engages them. But gosh, it'd be great if we could do our jobs as educators and meet each child where they are and where they can be heard and can be engaged.
Yep.
So, you know, that's my hope. It's like vast and lofty, and you know, we'll work a little bit every day on it and learn from everyone that we can learn from, and keep at it.
Yes. And you have, and you know, I think that Sarah, just personally, you should be really proud of yourself, because not only did you just take over an organization, become the executive director, you secured funding to keep it going, and you're growing it. So
Working on it, yeah.
Sarah's like one of those young people under XXX to watch.
Wow.
She's doing incredible things.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
And I think what's also really important is all of that international education that you got applies to all of what we're doing in New York City.
It does. It does. And yeah, my goodness, I have a million other rants to go on, but I will save them for our next.
All right, we're going to do this in a couple months.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Just help me out. Interagency Network
for Education in Emergencies. It's
okay, I have the URL.
I believe it's inee.org.
Yep. Okay. So we got that on there. People can reach you through Vision Ed.
Yes.
We have the Castle also. And Isabel, thank you for being on here and for your comments. And
so
we're going to call it a wrap. And it's so moving for me to have started something and to have handed it to somebody who's just like taking it over and doing it. Really,
I'm honored that you gave me that opportunity and really kind of took a leap of faith with me, because you know, it means everything to me. And I appreciate everything that I've learned from you and all of the support that I've gotten from you, and, you know,
excellent.
Hope to do it justice.
It's very moving and it's fantastic. And I think we'll do this every couple months. We'll check in. How are you doing? Because Sarah's starting a new grant. Why don't we end on that? You're starting the extended school day. So this is, I'm just going to give a little background and then let Sarah give a few words about it, and then we'll call it. But this is a very competitive grant to get. And Sarah figured it all out, applied, and was awarded quite a bit of money from the state to run this program in how many schools?
4 schools.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So we're working on getting all that up and running. And what we created for each of those schools is, and we're still sort of working on designing those programs fully to be able to start. But it's a combination of social emotional learning, like weekly workshops with whatever grades and classes the administrators want us to do, and then also after school arts and recreation. And the idea is that the social emotional learning will really lend itself and is transferable to any of the after school activities that they're doing. So, you know, if they're working on like identifying and dealing with frustration or anger or whatever, and they're doing that in their social emotional learning, like daytime programming, they, you know, will hopefully eventually begin to realize that, you know, that these things are transferable to, you know, that they can apply these skills that they're learning to other arenas.
Right. I think we both share that. I think we both share that. My goal when a kid comes to Robofun or goes to one of your programs is that the learning doesn't stop there, and that in some ways, whatever platform we're using is a Trojan horse for empowerment, for self-learning. So,
absolutely.
So I'm going to call it an afternoon.
Definitely.
And I so appreciate your time, and for everyone listening, Risa Ibrahim, thank you for jumping in and thanking us. And I want everyone to have a wonderful, safe day.
Thank you so much too.
Bye-bye.